I need like a gavel. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Today is March 20th, 2024, and this is the Legislative Committee. We'd like to call the committee to order. And if we could have everybody who is not going to be in the meeting leave the room, that'd be great. Roll call, please.
Bates, Doherty,
Doherty here.
Molina,
Molina present.
Silva, Strathman, Gums,
Here.
Linder.
Linder here, remote.
Thank you. So we have a remote request for Ms. Molina and Mr. Linder. Any objection? No objection. Very good. Thank you guys for coming. So,
Did I forget to put one in? I apologize.
Mr. Doherty, if there's no objection, Mr. Doherty. Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Sorry, I didn't.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right, and I would entertain I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from January 17th.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
Chair,
Tep,
point of order.
point of order.
I do not believe you have an
1, 2, 3.
quorum. So you need to
4,
count
5.
either Madam
We have-
Chair or myself.
How about both?
That's fine. We just need to vote. If we do that,
Yes,
that's fine.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Can I get that motion for the minutes, please?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Strathman.
From January 17th.
All right, without objection, the minutes are approved. We do have public comment. Right now we have Mr. Mark Avalar. Mark, you're familiar with the process. You are our only speaker today. And just to preface, Mark has sent us some emails about this particular topic, and we're going to lean on him later if we have more questions. So Mr. Avalar, please go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair and members of the committee and members of the board. I'm like probably a few of y'all, and I'm a little bleary-eyed from election night last night. It's terrific to see democracy in action, and certainly something that's near and dear to me. Mental health. Our neighbors in McHenry County did approve the sales tax conversion referendum, 52 to 47%. And things like effective public policy doesn't happen in a vacuum. The groundwork for that referendum was laid here in this Kane County boardroom in late 2022, and it passed on March 17, 2024. And another time I can describe where Kane County's input went into that, even if you don't know it did. The topic I'm talking about, though, is a similar situation of look for solutions, bring everybody to understand, to a level of understanding. And this is where I'm coming to with the independent contractors issue. That has now hit the fan, pardon the pun, with the Department of Labor's implementation of its rule change on March 11th. And it's to bring compliance to the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Mark, can I interrupt you for 1 second? If the people inside the back of the room can exit the room, we're just having some difficulty hearing. Thank you. Sorry about that, Mr. Avalar. Continue.
So like the McHenry County Board's referendum that passed yesterday, we're trying to do proactively to address what, in my opinion, is an injustice against the tens of millions, no matter whose numbers you use, who choose to work as independent contractors. And tomorrow, and this is legislation I would like for this committee to track, House Joint Resolution number 116 in DC. Its Senate counterpart is Senate Joint Resolution 63. And tomorrow morning in the House Education and the Workforce Committee, there is a markup of the House Joint Resolution. It's the Congressional Review Act formal objection to the rule change by the Department of Labor, as Congress has a right to do under the Congressional Review Act. So that vote will take place in the full House, I presume, either later this month or very early next month. But this is to help undo a very bad rule. It's 339 pages long. 339 pages, and for the solopreneurs and the entrepreneurs to have to go through that. And in my role in local mental health board, I've had to do that, as well as read the Fair Labor Standards Act itself, in order to ensure that our independent contractor is in compliance with federal law. And even if they're not, they're in compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. This is just a challenge for all businesses. In Springfield, there is House Bill 3441, which is being amended as we speak, and hopefully will be published. And this is also generated from a Kane County event, Carpentersville, Illinois, Independent Contractors Roundtable. We had many key players in the legislature and in the state government, including Illinois House Labor and Commerce Committee Chairman Marcus Evans in person. And there was a terrific understanding and a bellwether moment of where we don't want Illinois to go the way of California. We don't want an extreme view on independent contractors. We want the freedom, and we are finally seeing some cooperation, and we might see some fruition either in the spring session or even in the fall, but it's under works. Now, I know I'm out of time, but as you mentioned, I'll be staying here for the meeting should there be a question, but HJRES 116 is the committee hearing tomorrow morning in a markup. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And just really quick, that was resolution 63, right?
Senate Joint Resolution
Okay, got
63.
it.
It's the companion piece to the House Joint Resolution.
Thank you very much. All right, and I don't believe we have anybody signed up for public comment other than that online. So we'll move right along to our legislative update, and we have McGuire Woods online with us today to provide some legislative updates. I believe they're online.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thanks for inviting us to come present. We'll
Just
try
your
to be-
name. Sorry.
This is Greg Bales with McGuire Woods Consulting. Two of my colleagues are on. I'll let them introduce themselves when they speak. We're going to try to be brief and make time for questions if there's any. Does that work for you?
That's perfect.
I'm going to start giving you a quick federal update. I'd say the two most pressing and exciting matters are what's going on with the federal budget. Earlier this month, Congress passed 6 of the 12 appropriation bills for fiscal year 24. These are the bills that fund the government. Noteworthy in FY24 was a congressionally directed spending request from the county to the coroner for their Regional Forensic Science Center. While they initially had requested $3 million, a lot of items were cut by the House committee staffs. This was across the board. I just want to make it clear this was by no means a cut made by Congressman Bill Foster, who was gracious enough to submit for the request. So the project funding went down to $960-some thousand. It's still a significant win for the county, and we're really excited. We're encouraging the county to continue to push for additional funding for this project in FY25, which we're working closely with the county and staff and board members on. So that's the most pressing and hot ticket item going on. This week, Congress is attempting to pass the remaining 6 fiscal year 24 appropriation bills. What they've done is package them into what they refer to as a mini bus. Speaker Johnson in the House typically likes to give his members 72 hours to read this. We're coming to a crunch with March 22nd as the deadline. It's possible he will waive the rules on that 72-hour rule, but Congress needs to act before that. Otherwise, we'll face a shutdown in 6, sort of the 6 buckets that those bills fund. I anticipate Congress will get it done by the deadline. It is possible they vote for a very short-term continuing resolution. Continuing resolutions basically maintain funding levels at the existing level. So there's a lot to sort of wait and see the remainder of this week. Other than that, we're waiting to see if Congress moves on a large tax package. The House passed in a bipartisan fashion a tax package that extended some tax cuts and tax credits that were authorized in 2017. Those expire at the end of 2025. This was negotiated with House Republican leadership and Senate Democratic leadership from the tax committees. Unfortunately, the bill is stalled out in the Senate right now over some haggling over what's included in the package. One of the main items that Democrats push for is the child tax credit. That seems to be a sticking point. It's to be determined what Senate Majority Leader Schumer wishes to do and if they'll be able to negotiate a deal. Other than that, there's a talk of a supplemental package for federal or foreign aid for Ukraine and Israel. While Speaker Johnson was initially opposed, he's been publicly saying now that he's open to a standalone supplemental package. Again, a lot of hurry up and wait on if it will pass. So those are some of the big items. I want to turn it over to Louis Moses and James Sherwood to talk more about what's happening in Springfield, and I'll be on the call to take questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Louis Mossos from McGuire Woods. As was
Welcome, Louis.
mentioned, yesterday's election has sucked a lot of the air in the room in Springfield, and apologies. That's why we're in our cars. That threw a wrench in the legislative calendar for this week, so we're driving down for session now. As you are aware, all 118 state representatives and a third of the 59 senators were up for re-election. The supermajority Democrats had an unusually high number of primary races. So up until now in the legislative session, they were, more focused on non-legislative items. A lot of folks were in their district doing the politics. So now that the election is over, once the fatigue wears off this week, we can get back to business. In the Senate, they had a deadline of passing bills out of committee on last Friday, March 15th. A lot of bills did not pass for those reasons. Folks were not in town. So a lot of the bills were extended to April 5th, which coincidentally is also the House deadline to pass bills out of the committee. The deadline to pass bills out of the individual chambers is April 12th for the Senate and April 19th for the House. And I will turn it over to James to give an update on the broadband bill that we've been working very hard on for the county.
Yes, good morning. James Sherwood with McGuire Woods. Excuse me. So Senate Bill 3173 has been our primary initiative over the past couple of months. This is Senator DeWitt's legislation that would allow the county to lease or license its broadband infrastructure. And as you know, the county has a pretty extensive and expensive network of fiber optics underneath the ground. And our IT department would like the ability to generate some revenue off of that unused infrastructure. I believe that they estimate that the county could bring in almost $800,000 in additional revenue as a result of this legislation. So Senator DeWitt filed this bill last year. He's been a great champion for the county, and we have been working closely with him this session to make sure that it gets passed and signed into law. We initially had opposition from the Illinois Cable Association, which is largely Comcast. They were concerned about the implications of them having to compete with the public entity and how that would work. So we had a series of negotiations with them. We worked on language, and we now have an amendment that removes their opposition. So as Louis mentioned, the committee deadline expired last Friday, but we worked with Senator DeWitt and the Senate Democrats to get an extension on our bill. And it is now going to get a hearing on Friday morning at 9:30. Senator DeWitt's going to call it in the Energy and Public Utilities Committee in the Senate. And Roger Fonstack from the IT department is going to come down to Springfield to testify in case there's any technical questions from the legislators. But I think we're in a good position. As far as we know, there hasn't been any opposition that has come forward. The Illinois Association of Counties have also slipped in favor. Representative Anna Moeller in the House has pre-filed for the bill, so she can carry it in her chamber. And I just spoke to Representative Dan Ugasti, who is also going to file as a chief co-sponsor in the House. So we have bipartisan support in both chambers. And I should have mentioned Senator Linda Holmes is also a chief co-sponsor with Senator DeWitt. So we have strong sponsors. We've worked with the opposition, and I think we're in a really strong place. So we'll give you an update over the coming weeks, but Friday's committee should be relatively smooth, and then we should be able to send it over to the House in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions about that bill.
No, thank you very much. Got anything else for us at this point? Or
I
we
was
ready for
the last thing.
questions?
The last thing Louis and I were just going to touch on briefly is, as most of you are probably aware, Governor Pritzker has proposed a repeal of the grocery tax. And this has some pretty significant implications at the local level in terms of loss of revenue. The Illinois Municipal League is sort of leading the advocacy effort to push back on that repeal. The local mayors and local officials are reaching out to their legislators to explain the importance of that revenue. Senator Pritzker penned an op-ed just a few days ago in the Tribune, basically arguing that he really does feel strongly about this repeal, that it would provide some much needed relief to working class families. And of course, there are political advantages to the repeal for him as well. But if you have any information for us in terms of the impact for Kane County, please let us know, and we will continue to work on this. This is probably an issue that will get resolved in May during the budget negotiations. So this is going to be a continuing topic. And but if there's any information or data that you have for us that would help, assuming Kane County would like to keep this tax in place, please let us know and we can continue to keep you updated. That's it.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is probably for Louis. Louis, I noticed on the list that there are some number of bills that relate to the senior tax freeze. What do you think the status and the probability of getting any of those passed or at least combined so that it'll increase that limit from 65,000 to something higher?
Well, we understand that's a priority, and we've talked to many members of not just the delegation, but in general. And it seems to be that the folks who would like to increase that number are in the minority, but they're very strong and they want to move forward. As it was looking, several weeks ago prior to the election, the chances of something maybe happening by the end of May looked a little slim. But it all depends. Now we'll follow up, see if the election results, have forced any people to change their positions. It will likely get done, but it's just not looking like an issue that might be ready this year. Like I said, the folks who are for this issue, they're working on their colleagues to bring them on board. The people who are opposed are concerned that by raising this number, you're just shifting costs to other people who might not be able to pay. So the good thing is this doesn't appear to be a Democrat versus Republican issue. There's folks on both sides who are either for or against it for various reasons. But I'd say right now, when we checked in, it did not look like the majority votes were there to get it done by the end of May.
Well, if at Louis in particular, if at any point where you might need some assistance where people calling and or writing in, we can lead the charge on that and help you with that. But I wanted to hold up on that until, we had something that had a high, or at least a higher probability of it at least reaching a vote on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Tepe.
Understood. Thank you. And we recognize this is a priority and it's our priority.
Thanks.
Miss-
Second item.
Go ahead, Mr. Tepe.
Okay. There's a situation that occurred in Elgin Township that relates to their mental health board and the funding of that mental health board, with differences in the wording between the PTEL and the 708 mental health board wording that has led to some funding challenges. And I understand that Suzanne Ness is putting forward a bill to help get that rectified for Elgin Township. Are you aware of that? And if you're not aware of it, would you try to work with her and see if we can make that happen?
So yes, Mr. Tepe, would you mind shooting me an email on that so then I can make sure that they can have all the relevant information?
I'll get the relevant information. I'll dot the i's and cross the t's and send it to you.
Excellent. Thank you. And Ms. Bates? I can't hear you.
Thank you. If you don't mind my asking, what exactly does the food tax go towards? The 1% food tax, is that specified? I'd like to hear the lobbyist, if you don't mind.
Anybody in specific you want to ask that? Can anybody answer that
Greg.
question in more detail about the grocery tax?
What does that go towards?
So the 1% tax that flows through the state and passes down to the units of local government, as far as I know, the municipalities have a lot of discretion over how they use that revenue. I'm not sure if there's if specific restrictions on it, but it's basically passed down. The state collects it and then passes it down to the locals. Governor Pritzker's contention is that units of local government have received a significant amount of additional revenue during his tenure in office, specifically over the Capitol bill, and that he thinks this loss is not going to be that significant in the long run, considering how much the locals have benefited. I don't know, Louis, if you had anything else to add.
I don't recall it being earmarked for a specific purpose. We'll look into that, and if we are incorrect, we'll get back to you as to how exactly it's to be spent by the county or the municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. And Ms. Bates, if you dig into that a little more and send an email to us so we can get it for the next one, that'd be great. Any more questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. A little bit more about that tax. Previously, during the COVID crisis, when that tax was eliminated temporarily, we were made whole by the ARPA money that was coming through the state. Since that now has stopped, this tax is going towards exactly the general fund for all of our municipalities and villages, local government. Once that stops, there will be a choice of whether or not local government wants to take up that tax so that they don't have that reduced levy, that amount of money coming in to support the work that they do, or just take a cut. So that's the concern.
So we could replace it with our own tax?
That's accurate.
Correct.
I look forward to you guys digging into that and getting back to me. All right. Does anybody else have any more questions for our team online at all?
Good report.
I think we're good to go there. Also, I will, just so you guys are aware, I'll circle back on some things after we have conversation today about what we're going to be talking about shortly. So thank you very much, guys. Be safe. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you know, we had a speaker come up and talk about, and he had sent emails, Mr. Avalar is here. He had sent some emails, and I believe this is, as the chair, perfect opportunity for the committee to discuss what was presented. And I guess, and I talked to Ms. Bates briefly before the meeting, the direction of this committee, I think maybe a conversation you guys should have is what legislation you want to support and what you don't, how it affects King County, things like that. So maybe Ms. Bates want to have that round talk with committee members.
Okay. Well, in the spirit of using all my resources, I have had a couple of bills come to my attention through friends, or for example, I'm a member of the Prairie State Canoeists, and they are promoting a House Bill 4708, which has to do with kayaking rights. I think it's riparian rights. You know, the rights of people to paddle down little creeks that go through private property. Right now, the private property owners can say, no, you can't travel through my property, even though the creek is a is a waterway, small creeks and rivers. So that's Prairie State Canoeists. That's a kayaker's dream, wish. A friend of mine from Bell Labs, a woman friend, has worked very hard to get a bill, SB 2682, called Women in Tech. I worked at Bell Labs for 20 years. This is to try to figure out why women, including me, leave the tech sector. So that's another bill. And then I have 5 bills from ISACO, Illinois State Association of Counties. I recently asked them to start up an energy and environmental committee, which we did. And so they found 5 bills for us that have to do with wetlands, organic waste composting, solid waste, wetlands and PFAS in different water and products. So to bring us to where Ms. Gumbs, I think, wants us to go is are bills like this that are not specific to Kane County, something that our committee should be taking up. They do affect Kane County. Of course, wetlands, organic use of composting, kayaking, all of these affect Kane County, but they are not special to us. So Ms. Gums has asked me to start the conversation on, do we want our committee to be specific or general? And I guess that's where we are. I guess I would say general, because there's things here that affect the whole state, but also affect Kane County. So.
Any committee members have comment on that? Okay, Ms. Strathman.
How would you define specific versus general?
I guess, Ms. Bates, go ahead.
whoa.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, I believe that the broadband one was very specific to Kane County. That was the broadband bill that we just discussed.
Jurisdiction of the bill that we would be supporting or not supporting?
No, I think the broadband bill that we're talking about is specific to Kane County. It's just, I mean, sometimes there's very specific and small bills that get passed. And amazingly so, they managed to do these tiny bills and great big broad statewide bills. But the broadband bill was specifically for Kane County to be able to rent out, lease out some of the capacity on our broadband cables, wires. So that would be very specific. That was just for Kane County. Whereas something like PFAS in the water, or those terrible PFAS chemicals, or something that would be about the wetlands of Illinois, would also affect Kane County, but not in a specific way, as would, the thing about kayaking. I'm sure must be rivers and creeks in Kane County or the whole state, or this women in tech that affects women throughout the state of Illinois, and it would affect Kane County. So do we want only, I mean, it might come down to our capacity to push these bills, but to put these on a list that we want to ask our legislators our lobbyists to keep track of, or to ask our legislators to be aware of, that doesn't take much work on our part. So,
well, I guess my question is this a way to prioritize? Is that what you're thinking?
Well,
because I understand, I mean, it all affects us in different ways, but is this an organizing and prioritizing method that you're talking about?
I think so. I think so. I mean, they get thousands of bills. And so if we can find a list of 7, I have a list of 7, and I would like to ask this body, this legislative committee, to talk to all of our legislators. I will also talk to our legislators, but to give Kane County's approval and weight to a bill about women in tech, or about wetlands, or about composting organic materials. So that's what I thought. That's what I thought this committee was for. So,
Madam Chair, if I might ask another question?
Yes, Ms. Strathman.
So then, as committee chairman, or committee members, rather, excuse me, we would get the bills and the numbers, and then, so I'm trying to, I can see where all of it is so important.
So if I might, Ms. Molina, I see you as well. Did you want to speak first, and then I'll give you my general? Ms. Molina, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm kind of confused with the question here. I was under the assumption that we were going to put together a list of priorities, and based on those priorities, we would be reviewing bills that were going to come forward. So things like unfunded mandates that are going to affect our county's budget, and pieces of legislation that take power away from the county board, so that we don't have the ability to make decisions, examples with the solar panels. That was I'm not sure, but that's kind of what the policy portion is of what we're doing. All the other things are really important to our citizens, but I don't want our lobbyists' time and effort to be spent on something that isn't going to directly affect Kane County as a government agency, as an organization. So I would lean towards being very specific as to what our priorities are and sticking to those ideals for our lobbyists.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. You basically kind of said what I was going to say as far as, we want to oppose any legislation that is bad. This is my opinion. I'm the chair, probably shouldn't say that. I think we should oppose any legislation that is bad for us in a general term. I think we should support any legislation that is good for us in a general term. And then as you guys get the information, I would appreciate that forward, right? You all forward things to me so that we can identify like the broadband bill is bringing a huge benefit to King County. So if those things come up, but we need to be, I hear that, the solar issue or kayaking issue is affecting the entire county, but I agree. I don't think, just from my perspective, I don't know that that's something we want our lobbyists to be focusing on in that. I mean, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so.
So with that kind of direction from the board here, I think we'll continue and get those priorities in a more general sense out there, and then we'll present them next month for sure. I'd be done with it.
I'm gonna,
And then, go ahead.
okay. Well,
We have some other people to talk, so I
Okay.
need to. But
right, sorry. So perhaps the kayaking one and the women in tech would be maybe less relevant, but these 5 bills that came from the ISACO list, the Illinois State Association of Counties Environmental Committee, I would have to say that this definitely does affect the county.
yes, so after you do, so after you're doing, what, Ms. Bates, after you do it's a new structure, right? So we have a new committee with ISACO. We have all kinds of new committees with ISACO. So after those meetings, I think it would benefit this committee for you to report on what those 5 bills are and say, this is what we believe we should go forward with and support or oppose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also have, I have invited Mr. Rickard here today because he has a little update on some things happening with KDOT, and also, if you could do like a little conversation about your lovely trip to Washington.
All right, I'll do my best. Just wanted to give an update on our legislative activities that we've been working on. That's one of the things that the committee has requested that we do on a regular basis. And so I'm trying to be at these committee meetings as much as I can be. We did attend the NACO Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. This was February 10th through the 13th. It was a 4-day conference. It was primarily focused on a lot of different county issues, and they did a lot of training there on how to have your voice at the federal level. They spent a lot of time on some of the federal priorities that counties have, and then I focus primarily on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and a lot of my time was spent with the other 6 counties. All the 6 counties from northeastern Illinois were in attendance, and I spent most of my time with the transportation representatives from those counties, attending primarily the Transportation Steering Committee activities. We did a lot of discussions on what is needed. Some of the discussions that took place was the counties really need guaranteed direct federal funding for county-owned roads and bridges. Approximately 44% of all the roadways in this nation are county highways. 38% of the bridges are county bridges. Yet most of the federal funds go directly to the state and then are distributed through formula. And some of the discussion was trying to figure out what are ways that we can do more direct funding to address the county needs. There was discussion on some of the overweight discussions going on at the federal level about increasing the weight tonnage for trucks. and by another 11,000 pounds. When that occurred from 72,000 to 80,000, we saw some impacts to our roadways. So the counties have concerns on that. The counties have some concerns on the red tape as far as the permitting process. So there were discussions on that aspect as well. And again, how do we, on the bipartisan infrastructure bill, how do we make sure that we're doing our best in order to address the funding needs? We also had McGuire Woods did an excellent job. Greg Bales, Louis, the team out there did a great job with our committee chair, Gums, and myself. We had an opportunity to meet with Representative Krishnamurthy, with Representative Foster. We also met with staff from Senator Durbin's office, Senator Duckworth's office, and Representative Underwood's office. I primarily spent time talking about, well, it was almost like a thank you tour, just spending some time just saying thank you for your efforts, the various projects. The projects that I spent a little bit of time talking on were the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which we've received close to $700,000 in order to do a safety study for Kane County. This was a regional effort with CMAP as well as all the other counties, suburban counties and Cook County. Talked a little bit about the needs for transit. Right in Kane, again, is very important to us. We received quite a bit of federal funds in order to ensure that Right in Kane is moving forward and sustained. We talked a little bit about the infra program. This was that $25 million that we recently received, and so said thank you for that. Those types of funds are important, especially this would be our last grade separation on Randall Road to accomplish. So that $25 million is the only way we could even look at that. And that's in the midst of train traffic increasing as far as some of the interstate commerce. And so we need to address that grade crossing. And then we also thank them for some of the STP funding. That STP funding, a lot of it is formula, as well as it comes through CMAP. But that money is federal funds. And in order for us to do a number of our intersection projects that we're currently doing, like along Randall Road, that money is important. We currently have about $15 million in the process for construction of intersections along Randall Road in the next few years. So thank them for that, as well as their recent efforts for the Doberman grade separation down in the southwest part of Kane. So again, primarily a thank you tour. We met with a lot of different representatives from the federal government, with Federal Highways, USDOT, different individuals from the House committees on infrastructure, and talked about different transportation issues. And then we also made some requests. Those requests were focused on our recent application for some ATTAIN funding. This is federal funds to upgrade our signal infrastructure along Randall Road, to bring it up to date, to enhance our fiber optic, to enhance the type of controllers that we have out there. So we spent a little bit of time talking about that. McGuire Woods, Greg Bales and his team were able to get us support letters from all of our legislators that I previously mentioned that we met with, and primarily it was staff at the time because they were in various meetings and stuff, but we were able to at least get letters of support through the efforts of McGuire Woods, and we're hoping that it's about $4.8 million request that we have for the upgrades of the infrastructure of our signal systems and such. So that's kind of the big overview. We continue to have discussions. I was recently down in Springfield for a day a week ago and met too with a lot of our state representatives, about a half a dozen of our representatives in Springfield, and talked about some of our a little bit more local projects that we really need state assistance on. And so a number of different issues being discussed ongoing. And so I do have, if anybody wants copies of the federal projects that are moving forward or our draft legislative efforts that we've have pushed forward that this committee will start looking at in the near future. I have copies of that if anybody wants to take a look at some of the things that we're discussing. One of the primary things that Madam Chair and myself have brought up in the past is the part discussion on transit and the significant funding concerns that will be hitting transit issues for the entire region. There are different resolutions that some of our, like Metro West and other government councils have passed. Counties are considering what their next steps are in order to ensure that our legislators in Springfield know exactly our concerns with funding. That's, I think, our primary concern here at Kane County in discussions with the service boards and different county board members. The funding is the critical aspect. There's a lot of discussion on the governance. That's a concern that staff, as well as Madam Chair, has expressed to our legislators in Springfield, that to just make a one transit entity will take away from some of the local aspects. Right now, we work on a regular basis with PACE, with Ride and Cane and other planning aspects of transit, and with Metra. And to make it into one regional entity, we're not going to have that walk in the door and talk about local concerns aspects. So we really want to make sure that we're talking with our legislators before any type of governance gets too far and potentially harms the more local suburban type of transit. And so that's, again, a general overview. We have regular meetings with various legislators, as well as Madam Chair and I go downtown to meetings in Chicago quite often to talk about regional issues. And we really are doing our best to have our voice heard. And so if you have any questions, that's a big overview.
Wonderful. Thank you. Tom, yes. Yeah, you can ask a question.
Tom, I have in mind yesterday at transportation, there were issue was raised about the funding formula for townships in the Ride and Cane program. Is that something that would require federal or state legislation if the board were interested in pursuing that?
No, that's really probably more of a transportation committee guidance to staff. We at staff level, we're already advocating for a more of an allocation of what the county board gives to the Division of Transportation for the program, more of a ridership allocation. When those funds were initially, that was part of when the RTA sales tax was created, one of the commitments that we made was that that a portion of those funds would go towards the paratransit efforts that the county board directed staff to work on. And so we've been doing that. The requests really have only been in the last year or so for more of an allocation based upon ridership. It used to be based upon sponsorship because we were trying to bring more sponsors into the program and trying to encourage them to get involved. We completely understand the township's requests that it's more on ridership, and we've already started to draft our agreements with all the sponsors that it's more directly related to ridership. It's not like it's big chunks of money. It's probably closer to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So it's not major, but it is helpful. And we do want to assist Dundee Township in some of the concerns that they have brought forward. And so you'll start seeing some of those discussions over the summer.
Gums, I just want to thank you for your participation. It's, for quite a while now, we've been asking for people to participate, and we're getting that. And I'm very excited about that because as you can see, it makes a difference. So knowing what's happening in Springfield and what our team is doing is very, very important to get stuff done. So thank you very, very much. And I just to touch base on the Washington trip, we actually had, he went to a lot of transportation things and I went to a lot of judicial, public safety, mental health things. It was kind of like playing tag. So go ahead.
I was going to mention too, that it was also a lot of coordination with ISACO. They actually had a dinner one of the nights that we were out there with various speakers, and all the counties were represented at the ISACO dinner. That was at the National Press Club. And so that was kind of fun. And so that it's the legislative conference, and I'm sure the upcoming summer conference, the overall NACO conference, this is a good opportunity for the county to really understand what the issues are and to really reach out to our legislators on county issues.
And I think just comes here again, the thank you is so important. It really was. And just to show up, I think was extremely relevant because all the other counties show up. And so it was great to be there. And I wore my sparkly shoes so they won't forget we were there. And we had a visit from POTUS. That was fun too. So anyways, anybody have any questions about that? All right. Thank you very much. It matters. I do want to bring up one thing that we had in public comment, and that is from Mr. Avalar, and he wants support. He sent an email to us and asked for some support on some legislation. So this is, there's a resolution to support and a resolution to oppose. And I just want, if you don't mind, I'd like to have him come up to explain what it is he's asking this committee to do. And then get your feedback on what you guys think.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. The ask has to do with this legislative committee beginning the process for the county board to support in the passage of House Joint Resolution 116 or its Senate counterpart, and to let, as Mr. Rickert brought up, the weight of the county board to add emphasis that local government is interested in the issues, particularly when it comes to the tens of millions of independent contractors across the country. I don't have a count of Kane County. Illinois is estimated to be 2.8 million. And this is a big deal. I described during my speech earlier, reading through a 339-page document and the Fair Labor Standards Act. Most businesses would have to turn to their lawyers, and that's an expense that everybody tries to avoid. But you also have to be compliant with all the laws, federal and state. So I would ask for a resolution of support for House Joint Resolution 116. Very timely. It's going to committee tomorrow. It will likely be for a floor vote by early April in the House. The other legislation was House Bill 3441. That is currently being amended as we speak, along with the mental health that Mr. Tepe had alluded to. And that is to ensure that Illinois maintains the best relationship possible under the challenges of employment, the challenge of that's coming from Washington, and to ensure that independent contractors based in Illinois can comply with all the laws and work the way they want to in order to be their own boss, pursue their dreams, and basically provide for their families. So House Bill 3441, I'd like a similar resolution coming out of this committee, at least today, and then for a full county board discussion and approval later. Since this is the committee process, the articulation goes from legislative to, I presume, executive, and then the full board. So that's my ask.
Thank you very much. I did have one question, and that's why I wanted you to stick around. So as we were talking earlier about the general terms of what we support and what we oppose, I think my question for you is, this seems to me like it will affect quite a few people in Kane County. And you said you didn't have the number.
I
but
don't
if
have the
you-
number, and I don't know, maybe the Jobs Committee has that number, but certainly it definitely affects me. It affects, I know at least 2 or 3 county board members who are also 1099s. And I know a couple of the mayors also have a 1099 side business, whether it's part-time or full-time. It's a matter of if their ability to work the way they've been working is impeded, then can local government, can this county board raise this and bring this up to the federal or state level and say, stop, let's do what's right. Let's get past the bromides, the platitudes, the narratives, and the talking points, and let's get to the solution where all of us can reach common ground and work together. We saw that progress last summer in Carpentersville with the Independent Contractors Roundtable, because you had all the people in the room. And that's what's hopefully going to be going into House Bill 3441, whether in the spring session or maybe in the fall.
And that one's Ness, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
Ness. And for Mr. Teppe's reference, in case it wasn't said for the record, he's looking at House Bill 4541, which is also the Ness legislation that's also going to clean up what happened in Elgin Township Mental Health Board. I am familiar with that subject.
All right, thank you very much. So you answered my questions. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but I know on the back end, we'll go ahead and talk about that more specifically. Mr. Tepe.
I'd like to hear from the state's attorney. Is it appropriate for us to do a resolution or a proclamation? I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for us to do a resolution about something that's a House bill.
Well, Jepro,
That,
you have in the past done both. I mean, so I don't know that there's any right answer to it.
oh, well, then that's good. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, it's,
Wait.
you can do either one. I mean, you're basically expressing a sense of the body. You're not really legislating.
So, I mean, can we do a resolution like this?
Well, I mean, are you talking about an expression from this committee or from the full board?
Well, I think the committee can only recommend it to the board.
Correct.
I don't
Right.
think the committee can do anything independent, right? But nor should it. Okay, but the committee would move something forward.
Yes, well, I mean, that a proclamation doesn't have to originate in a committee. It could just originate at the full board. But if you want to put the time you put into it, to me, resolution carries more weight than a proclamation, but that's not really a legal judgment.
But we've been told in the past on other items that we have no ability to do any resolution in certain areas. That's why I was asking you for clarification.
So at the legislative committee, I guess to your question. So the legislative committee would do a resolution and then send it forward to executive, and then that will go to King County
But just,
Board.
I have a point of order.
Point of order, Ms. Bates.
Approximately 20 minutes ago, I was told that this committee will only be working on issues relating to the governance of Kane County. Therefore, none of the bills I brought forward were entertained. At the risk of sounding pouty, maybe I'm pouting, why would we move this forward? This doesn't seem to have anything more to do with the governance of Kane County.
So Ms.
than-
I think
Bates.
it was the
Ms.
citizens of
Boyd,
county,
yeah.
not the governance.
So Ms. Bates, to your point, if you recall, I did ask you to circle back on those 5 so that we could have a position on it.
There were 7.
Oh, I thought there was 5.
There were 5 from ISACO.
Yes.
And 2
And
from
to that
other
point, Ms.
groups.
Bates, I said, please circle back on that. So I didn't kill it. Right?
Okay.
No?
I thought
Is that
that the consensus of the group was that the only things that we were going to work on because of our limited capacity would be those bills that affected the governance of.
No, that was not my understanding.
The governance, I don't think was part of it.
I thought that was what Ms.
You should ask
Belina's
Ms.
wording-
Strathman because I think she posed the
Ms.
question.
Ms. Belita's wording was.
Yeah.
I believe I said
Yes.
the organization of King County. So anything with unfunded mandates, anything that affects our ability to make decisions that are overridden by the state legislature. I don't think governance was exactly the word, but
Okay.
I think ISACO is we are part of ISACO. So if ISACO takes a stand on a bill, more likely it's because it's affecting the counties and we should be supporting that as well. So.
Well, what if other groups are in favor of a bill? So we would support ISACO, but not Women in Tech or.
Are we,
Okay, I'm, now I feel like I'm out of order, but.
Yeah, that's really
Okay.
not part of a point of order.
Sure.
Hasn't the board previously adopted resolutions? Like there was a resolution on Ethan's Law, I believe. That was a resolution, not a proclamation.
Correct.
So I don't think you are encumbered in any way by what method. I mean, theoretically, you could just vote to send a letter.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to talk on the back end, Mr. Avalar, so I appreciate it, and I'll circle back with you. Thank you very much for being here. All right, Mr. Linder, do you have any comments?
No, except I think the point that we've just been discussing as to, you know, how connected to Kane County does something have to be for us to move forward? Just because it affects people in Kane County, it may not be something that's appropriate for us, or it may be. We need to put a lot of thought into that.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Mr. Doherty, your hand is up.
Yeah, somebody had mentioned just in the previous conversation about a limited amount of capacity to handle bills or issues or whatever. How do we know what our capacity limit is?
Mr. State's Attorney, can you answer that question?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question, Gary.
Well, okay, so somebody just said during the conversation with Ms. Bates about we have a limited amount of capacity to deal with issues, and my question was, we do? How do we know that our lobbyist has a limited capacity? Have they given us a capacity number?
I didn't think that was a statement that referred only to the lobbyist. I think it was a general statement that there's only so many hours in the day and so many board members, and you have to decide whether you're going to, solve the problem of sewage treatment in Bahrain versus other issues. I think that was all that was intended by that, is that everything on your agenda has to have its place, and there's probably a limited amount of time for both the board, the committee, and the lobbyist to deal with it.
Okay, but let's not limit ourselves and limit the lobbyists. Let's hammer as much as we can until they say, "Oh, too much." Right?
Right.
Right.
Mr. Roth. Thank you, Gary. I agree.
Roth here. We had a discussion months ago after we had signed the lobbyists that we need to have a process in place to draw up the list and then prioritize it. And I had offered to help offline on that. And I think that needs to happen because everyone's going to come. And if we don't have the list, then we can prioritize.
That would, yeah, Mr. Roth, to your point, that'd be excellent to have. I have sent out more than several emails. I am looking for direction from our department directors throughout the county. And
it's just a standard
it's
process.
challenging. And that's why I'm thanking our team members over here for being so engaged, because that's where we get our direction from as a committee, and that's what we need. So
right. And I'm welcome to help offline on that because it's,
yes,
I think
we'll
it's
talk about
critical.
yes, thank
The
you.
organizations you work with and that you belong to all have a list of their priorities, and some of them are yours, some of them might not be, but they work off a list.
Correct. So, okay.
No, I mean, that's 100% correct, Ken. What I think Bill is 100% right,
Yeah.
and that he needs to get with the chairs and get an agenda, a priority list.
Yeah.
And
I would love for our committee to engage in that as well.
yeah, and then when the lobbyist says that list is too big, then we can deal with it. But for right now, let's start creating the list.
Very good. I do, yeah. Mr. Doherty has now volunteered to do that. Thank you, Gary. All right, I don't have anything else. Does anybody, anybody have any reason to go into closed session? I don't believe we do.
No.
Any more questions or comments or concerns or anything at all? All right, well, I will entertain. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a lovely spring day. Enjoy it. And I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Bates moves.
Bates moves. All in
Seconds.
favor? Oh, Ms. Strathman seconds. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, guys.